normal flora. Okay, wait lang. Okay, so for the first topic, pathogenesis of bacterial infection. Okay, so in this chapter, we will be focusing on how the bacteria causes disease to human beings. So this process is the process of causing disease is termed as pathogenesis. So pathogenesis of bacterial infection or pathogenesis is a multifactorial process which depends on the immune status of the host, okay, the nature of the species or the strain or the virulence factors, and the number of organisms that or the number of organisms in the initial exposure. Okay. So at the end of this chapter, you should be able to understand the following definition of terms. Okay, it's on your book, so you can just read on it, explain the cause postulate, and explain the steps that are involved in the bacterial pathogenesis. Okay. So yeah. So pathogenesis of bacterial infection includes the initiation of the infectious process and the mechanisms that lead to the development of signs and symptoms of the disease. Okay, so the characteristic of bacteria that are pathogens includes the following. So we have transmissibility, adherence to host cells, persistence, invasion of host cells and tissues, toxigenicity, and ability to evade or survive the host immune system. So these are the following definition of terms that you will encounter as we run through this lecture. So please study them. Okay, so first is adherence. So this is an essential step in bacterial pathogenesis or infection required for colonizing a new host. So this is a major initial step in the infection process. So the terms when you encounter the terms adherence, adhesions, and attachment, okay, pare-pareho lang siya. So they can be used interchangeably. A carrier. So a carrier is a person or an animal with asymptomatic infection. So that can be transmitted, okay, to another susceptible person or animal. Then infection is a multiplication of an infectious agent within the body. Okay. Invasion. So this is the process whereby the bacteria, animal parasites, or fungi enter host cells or tissue and they spread in the body. Okay. Microbiota, or this is your microbial flora, is harbored by normal healthy individuals. So we'll be discussing your normal microbial flora later. Okay. A non-pathogen, so this is a microorganism that does not cause a disease. So this microorganism can also be a part of your normal flora or normal microbiota. Okay. Pathogens that are capable of establishing infection and causing disease in a previously healthy individual with intact immunological defenses, they are the opportunistic pathogens. So, however, this bacteria may more readily cause disease in those with, yun na nga, sinabi ko kanina, with those impaired immune system or those that are immunocompromised. Okay? So, a pathogen, okay, is a microorganism capable of causing a disease. Then a pathogenicity is the ability of an organism or an infectious agent to cause the disease. Okay? Okay. Ayaw mag-slide ko. Ayan. Sorry. Again. Okay. So super antigens, these are protein toxins that activate the immune system by binding to the major histocompatibility complex molecules. Okay, then they will stimulate large number of T cells to produce massive quantities of cytokines. Then toxigenicity is the ability of a microorganism to produce a toxin that contributes to the development of the disease. Virulence. Okay, so virulence is the measurement of pathogenicity. So virulence in the clinical sense is this is a manifestation of a complex bacterial host relationship in which the capacity of the organism to cause disease is considered in relation to the resistance of the host. So this involves the following steps. So it involves adherence, persistence, invasion, and toxicity. So it is important to remember that there are many variables to take into account in the host pathogen interaction. So the virulence of the pathogen is important, but so is the number of the microbes that gained entry to the host, okay, the location of entry, the overall health of the host, and the state of the host defenses. So exposure of a pathogen or exposure to a pathogen does not ensure that a disease will occur, since a host might be able to fight off the infection before disease signs and symptoms develop. So how do we know that a given pathogen causes a specific disease? So it can be difficult to show that a specific bacteria is the cause of the disease. So Koch forwarded four criteria to establish the causal relationship between the microbe and a disease. So he applied these postulates to establish the etiology of anthrax and tuberculosis, and now this has been generalized to other diseases. So the postulates are summarized as follows. So first, postulate. So the microorganism must be identified in all individuals affected by the disease but not in healthy individuals. So simplify ko na lang to mga to. Next, or the second postulate, the microorganisms can be isolated from the diseased individual and grown in culture. Then third, when introduced into a healthy individual, the cultured microorganism should cause the disease. And fourth, the microorganism must then be re-isolated from the experimental host and found to be identical to the original microorganism. Postulates 3 and 4, okay, are extremely important in definite proof of the role of agent in human disease. However, this depends on the ability to develop animal models that resemble the human disease. In many cases, such models do not exist. So the Koch postulates may not hold if, okay, the particular bacteria, such as the one that causes leprosy, okay, cannot be grown in pure culture in the laboratory. Okay, there is no animal model of infection with that particular bacteria. Okay, so the process of pathogenesis involves various steps, beginning with the transmission of the infectious agent or the bacteria to the host, okay, followed by colonization of the site. Then after colonization of the host, the bacteria will remain adherent to the site of colonization and then will invade the host immune system or host system. Then after surviving the host immune system, that microorganism is ready to cause the disease. So, nagkakaroon ng tissue injury. Okay? So the infection or an infection starts with exposure to a pathogen. So potential pathogens may enter the body by various routes, okay, including the respiratory, the GIT, urinary, and genital tracts. Alternatively, these microorganisms may directly enter tissues through insect bites, okay, or it can be due to accidental or surgical trauma to the skin. Okay, so many of of the opportunistic pathogens are carried as part of the normal human flora, and this acts as a ready source of infection in the compromised host. Okay, so the manner in which a pathogen can be picked up from its reservoir and then spread from one infected host to another is the mode of transmission. Listed below are the main mechanisms. Okay, so direct trauma, direct contact. Okay, this includes host-to-host contact. So this is through kissing, okay, by the sexual intercourse, okay, where one person might come in contact with another person's skin or body fluids. Another is droplet transmission. Okay, so droplet, this is often considered to be a form also of a direct contact as well. So this involves transmission by respiratory droplets where an infected individual expels the pathogen in tiny droplets by coughing or sneezing, which is then inhaled by a host nearby. Another method is your indirect contact. So this involves the transfer of the infectious agent through some type of intermediary, such as a contaminated object. Okay? So the pathogen might be deposited on an inanimate object, or this is called a fomite. Then it is used by another person. Next is airborne transmission. So this occurs due to pathogens that are present in the environment. Okay, small particles or droplets present in the environment. Then a fecal oral route transmission. Okay, so this occurs when an infected individual is shedding the pathogen in their feces and contaminates food and water that is consumed by the next host. Then next is your vector-borne transmission. So in here, you have an arthropod vector such as mosquitoes, flies, ticks. Okay, they are involved in this transmission process. So the agent is picked up in the blood and then spread to the next host when the vector moves on to bite someone else. Okay. For many pathogenic bacteria, the initial interaction with host tissues occur at a mucosal surface, and colonization normally requires adhesion to the mucosal cell surface. So this allows the establishment of a focus of infection that may remain localized or may subsequently spread to other tissues. So establishment of a stable population of bacteria on the host skin or mucous membrane is called colonization. Okay. So what are the factors that affect, what are the factors that regulate the virulence of a bacteria? So here are the following, okay, these are the following environmental signals that affect the expression of virulence gene. So we have temperature, okay, we have iron availability, osmolality, growth pace, pH, and specific ions such as calcium or other nutrient factors. So you can read this in your book. Okay? So in order for a bacteria to be virulent, so it must have the capabilities that allow it to infect a host. So these capabilities arise from physical structures that the bacteria has or the chemical substances that they produce. Collectively, this characteristic contributes to the virulence, are called the virulence factor. So the ability of the microorganism to cause infection or disease are determined by the following factors. Okay, we'll be discussing this one by one. Okay, so adhesion is necessary to avoid innate host defense mechanisms such as peristalsis in the gut or the flushing action of your of mucus, okay, the saliva and urine, which remove non-adherent bacteria. So for bacteria, adhesion is an essential preliminary to colonization and then penetration through tissue. Okay? Successful colonization requires that the bacteria are able to acquire the essential nutrients, in particular iron, for their growth. Okay, so several different mechanisms of bacterial adherence have evolved, all of which is utilizing specialized cell surface organelles or macromolecules that help them to overcome the natural forces of repulsion that exist between the pathogen and its target cell. So many bacteria, okay, expresses pili or fimbriae, which are involved in mediating attachment to cell surfaces. So adherence can also involve polysaccharide layers that are present in bacteria, such as the capsule or the slime layer. Okay, so which provide adhesion to host cell as well as resistance to phagocytosis. So these are the adherence factors or your adhesins, okay, that are present in some in bacteria. Okay, pili, for example, in E. coli and gonorrhea, fimbriae, ayan, seen in Aspiogenes. Okay. The invasion of host by a pathogen may be aided by the production of bacterial extracellular substances which act against the host by breaking down the primary or secondary defenses in the body. So this substances is referred as the invasine. Okay, so most invasines are protein or enzymes, okay, that act locally to damage host cells and have the immediate effect of facilitating the growth and spread of the pathogen. Okay, the damage to the host as a result of this invasive activity may become a part of the pathology of an infectious disease. Okay, so here are the examples of invasines that are present in your in present in the bacteria. Okay. Next is your toxins. So these are very specific virulence factors that are produced by some of bacterial pathogens. So this is in a form of substances that are poisonous to the host. So toxigenicity refers to refers to the ability of the organism to make toxin. So for bacteria, there are two categories of toxin. So we have exotoxin and endotoxins. Okay? So exotoxins which is produced by your exotoxins is produced by both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria are heat sensitive, okay, soluble proteins that are released into the surrounding environment by a living organism. Okay, so these incredibly potent substances can spread through the host body, causing damage distant to the site or distant from the original site of infection. So they are associated with specific diseases, okay, with the toxin genes often carried on plasmids or by prophages. Actually, nasa table lahat ito. Okay, so there are many bacteria that produces exotoxins, okay, the one causing diseases such as botulism, tetanus, and diphtheria. Okay, on the other hand, the endotoxin is produced by gram-negative bacteria. Okay, so um, gram-negative bacteria. Okay, so the lipopolysaccharide or the LPS of gram-negative bacteria is a cell wall component that are often liberated when the bacteria is lysed. Okay, so this lipopolysaccharide, or I mean the outer membrane of a gram-negative bacteria contains lipopolysaccharide, which is the toxic component. Okay, so being the lipid part known as the lipid A. So the lipid A is heat stable and it is only released when the bacteria cell is live. So please study the difference between the two toxin. Okay? Nasa book din naman yan. So many species of bacteria produce enzymes that are not intrinsically toxic but do play important roles in the infectious process. Okay? Some of these enzymes are discussed as follows. So you have enzymes that break down collagen, like your collagenases, hyaluronidase, and you also have fibrinolysins that allow better penetration of microbes into tissue. They also have enzymes that break down cellular material like proteases, okay, lysinases that are associated in many Clostridium species. They also have enzymes and that modify antibiotics, okay, or inactivate antibiotics, your beta-lactamases, okay, yan, mga proteases. So this is an important virulence factors of the following pathogens. Okay, so as you all know, your immunoglobulin A is a secretory antibody present on the mucosal surfaces. So this protease is an important virulence factor. Yan, sa mga pathogen na yan. Kasi they allow or they inactivate the primary antibody found on your mucosal surfaces, thus eliminating the protection of the host by the antibody. Okay, anti-phagocytic factor. So some bacteria employ strategies to avoid engulfment or ingestion. So if phagocytes do make contact with them. So many important pathogenic bacteria bear on their surfaces substances that inhibit phagocytic absorption or engulfment. So clearly, it is the bacterial surface that matters. Okay, so resistance to phagocytic ingestion is usually due to a component of the bacterial cell wall, such as the pili or the fimbriae, diba, or the capsule or slime layer of a bacteria. Okay, so it those bacterial cell wall components acts as an adherent factor as well as anti-phagocytic factors of some bacteria. Okay, so examples naman are in your book. Okay. Some bacteria live and grow in a hostile environment within the polymorphonuclear cells, macrophages, and monocytes. So the bacteria accomplishes this feature, okay, or the intracellular pathogenicity by several mechanisms. So first, they may avoid or they inhibit a phagosome-lysosome fusion. Yeah, they may avoid entry into the phagolysosome and live within the cytosol of the phagocyte. Okay. Next, they may prevent phagosome-lysosome fusion. Okay, and survive and live within the phagosome. Okay, so the bacteria survive inside of the phagosome because they prevent the discharge of lysosomal contents into the phagosome environment. Third, they may be resistant to lysosomal enzymes and survive within the lysosome, within the phagolysosome. Okay, so the best or the best example of a bacteria that exhibit this intracellular pathogenicity is the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Other bacteria that exhibit that characteristics are Legionella species, Listeria species, and Brucella species. Okay, so the surface structures of bacteria and many other organisms or microorganisms have considerable antigenic heterogeneity. So often these antigens that are present are used as part of a serologic classification system for the bacteria. So these antigens are used, yun nga, as I've said, it is used as a part of a serologic classification system for bacteria. So the antigenic type of the bacteria may be a marker of virulence related to the clonal nature of pathogens, although it may not actually be the virulence factor. So usually, marker of virulence siya. And yun nga, for classification system ng bacteria yan. Next. Okay, so for the bacterial secretion system, so there are tables sa books ninyo regarding sa mga different bacterial secretion system of the bacteria. Okay, so these are important in the pathogenesis of infection and are essential for the interaction of bacteria with the eukaryotic cells of the host. Okay, the gram-negative bacteria have cell walls with cytoplasmic membranes and outer membranes. Okay, a thin layer of peptidoglycan also is present. The gram-positive naman, they have cytoplasmic membrane and a very thick layer of peptidoglycan. Okay, so some gram-negative bacteria naman and some gram-positive bacteria have capsules as well. So the complexity and rigidity of these cell wall structures necessitate mechanisms for translocation of proteins across the membrane. So these bacterial secretion system are involved in cellular functions, okay, such as yun nga, transports of protein, okay, that make the pili or flagella of a bacteria, and in the secretion of enzymes. So yun nga, the difference in the cell wall structure between the two organisms or between the gram-negative or gram-positive bacteria result in some differences in their secretion system. So please study the different secretion system in your book. Another virulence factor is the iron requirement of the bacteria. So the ability of a microbial pathogen is to efficiently obtain iron from the host is critical to its ability to cause disease. So iron availability affects the virulence of many pathogens. So example, di ba, in kanina sa previous slide, so that it can increase the susceptibility of the host to infection, or it can enhance also toxin production in some bacteria. Okay. Next is biofilm. So this is an aggregate of microorganisms in which cells adhere to each other on a surface. Okay. So they have been found to be involved in a wide variety of microbial infection in the body. They are formed, or this biofilm are formed in response to many factors, and they are associated with various infectious processes such as urinary tract infection, catheter infection, formation of dental plaques, and etc. Okay, so this is the last slide of the first part of your lecture. I think this is chapter 9 of your book. Okay, you can read on it. Okay, so let's move on to normal human microbiota or normal human flora. Okay.
Yeah.
So at the end of this lecture or chapter, you should be able to describe what a normal flora is. Okay, you have to know or take note of its advantages and disadvantages, and describe the normal flora of various parts of the human body. So the term normal microbial flora denotes the population of microorganisms that inhabit the skin and mucous membrane of healthy normal person. Okay? This skin and mucous membrane always harbor a variety of microorganisms that can be arranged in two groups. So we have a resident microbiota and a transient microbiota. So a resident flora or microbiota consists of a relatively fixed type of microorganism regularly found in a given area at a given age. Okay, so once it is disturbed, it will reestablish itself. Okay, so it constitutes a constant population and cannot be removed completely. On the other hand, your transient microbiota or your transient flora consists of a non-pathogenic or a potentially pathogenic microorganism that inhabit the skin or mucous membranes for hours, days, or weeks. Kaya siya sinabing transient. Okay? So this transient flora is derived from the environment. Okay? Does not establish itself permanently on the surface. Members of this flora or transient flora are generally of little significance as long as the normal flora remains intact. However, if the resident flora is disturbed, okay, this transient microorganism or transient flora may colonize, proliferate, and produce disease. Okay, so this is where your normal flora are found. You can find it on the skin, conjunctiva, nasopharynx, oral cavity, your GIT, rectum, and urogenital tract. Okay, so the skin. So your skin is the human body flesh organ, largest organ, and this is colonized by a diverse array of microorganisms, most of which are harmless or even beneficial to the host. Okay. So the predominant resident microorganisms of the skin are the following. So we have aerobic and anaerobic diphtheroid bacilli, non-hemolytic staph, okay? Gram-positive aerobic spore-forming bacilli. We also have alpha hemolytic streptococci, gram-negative coliform bacilli. We also have fungi and yeast, Acinetobacter, acid-fast, non-pathogenic microorganisms, ay microbacteria. Okay. So, sorry. Oops. Ba't bumalik? Yun. Okay, so, sorry. So low pH, okay, fatty acids present in the sebaceous secretions and the presence of lysozymes are important factors for eliminating non-resident microorganisms from the skin. Okay. So please here just take note of the medical important organism. Okay. So for the skin and cutaneous surfaces, including the urethra and the outer ear, the common or medically important organism of the skin and is Staphylococcus epidermidis. Other notable organism, but it is less common naman, yan are the following. So we have Staphylococcus aureus, Corynebacteria, Streptococci, anaerobes, Streptococci, and yeast. Okay? So in a conjunctiva naman, so a variety of bacteria may be cultivated in the normal conjunctiva, but the number of organisms is usually small. So the conjunctiva is relatively free from bacteria due to the presence of lysozyme in the tears, which flushes the bacteria. The predominant organism that is seen in the conjunctiva are the following. Okay, so we have diphtheroid, okay, Moraxella species, Staph epidermidis, also have Moraxella and non-hemolytic Streptococci. Okay. The oral cavity naman, so the presence of nutrients, epithelial debris, and secretion makes the mouth a favorable habitat for a rich variety of bacteria. So, oral bacteria, okay, includes Streptococci, Lactobacilli, Staphylococci, and Corynebacteria, with a great number of anaerobes, especially the bacteroides. Okay, so in the oral cavity, we have different flora and in the different developmental stages. So, at birth, the mouth presents a succession of different ecological situations with age, and this corresponds with the changes in the composition of the normal flora. So at birth, the oral cavity is composed solely of soft tissues of the lips, okay, cheeks, tongues, and palate, which are kept moist by the secretion of the salivary glands. Okay, so the oral cavity is usually sterile, but rapidly becomes colonized from the environment, particularly from the mother in the first feeding. Yan. Then during neonatal period, ayan, she changed ng flora, so it becomes aerobic and anaerobic Staphylococcus. Okay. And the eruption of the teeth during the first year leads to colonization by the following. So we have anaerobic spirochetes, Prevotella species, etc. Okay? And the creation of gingival crevice area, or these are the supporting structures of the teeth, okay, increases the habitat for a variety of anaerobic species. Yeah. Okay. So we move on to the upper respiratory tract. So the nasopharynx of the infant is usually sterile at birth, but in 2 to 3 days time, it acquires the flora carried by the mother. Okay. A large number of bacterial species colonize the upper respiratory tract or nasopharynx. Okay. The nares or the nostrils are always heavily colonized, predominantly with Staphylococcus epidermidis and Corynebacteria. Yeah. The nose. So please study the table. The common or medically important organism is Staphylococcus aureus. Okay. So, yun nga, in healthy sinuses, I mean, the sinuses natin, they are sterile. Okay, within 12 hours after birth, alpha hemolytic strep are found in the upper respiratory tract and become the dominant organism in the oropharynx and remain for the whole life. Sa pharynx naman and the trachea, similar flora is established. Smaller bronchi and alveoli are usually sterile. Next. Okay. So the esophagus, hindi ko na nasulat dyan, but the esophagus esophagus contains only the bacteria swallowed with saliva and food. Okay? Because of the high acidity of gastric juice, a very few bacteria, okay, mainly mga acid-tolerant lactobacilli can be cultured from the normal stomach. The stomach's acidity keeps the number of microorganisms at a minimum at around mga 10 to the third to 10 to the fifth per ml of contents, okay, unless there is already an obstruction at the pylorus, thus favor the proliferation of the gram-positive cocci and bacilli. So from the hundreds of phyllotypes that are detected or seen in the human stomach, only Helicobacter pylori persist in this kind of environment. Okay? So, pylori, as you all know, can cause gastric ulcers and also a probable cause of a gastric or duodenal cancer. Okay, let's move on to small intestine. Yeah, so for the proximal small intestine has a relatively sparse gram-positive flora consisting mainly of lactobacilli and Enterococcus faecalis. Okay, the microbiota of small intestine, okay, can contribute to the amino acid requirements of the host if they are not provided by the diet itself. So these are the benefits of your flora in the small intestine. Okay, the intestinal bacteria also produce short chain fatty acids that control intestinal epithelial cell differentiation. Also, the flora or the organisms present in the small intestine can synthesize vitamin K, biotin, folate, and can also enhance ion absorption. Yeah. Large intestine naman, okay? So, it is the flora of the large intestine or colon is qualitatively similar to that found in feces. Okay, coliforms become more prominent, and Enterococci, Clostridia, Lactobacilli can be regularly found, but the predominant species are anaerobic Bacteroides, anaerobic lactic acid bacteria in the genus Bifidobacterium. Okay, so at birth, again, the entire intestinal tract is sterile, but bacteria enter with the first feeding. Okay, the initial colonizing bacteria vary with the food source of the infant. So here, as you can see here in the table, so in the bottle-fed infant, or sorry, yes, breastfed infant, Bifidobacterium account for more than 90% of the total intestinal bacteria. Pag bottle-fed naman, or the Bifidobacteria is not predominant. Okay? So, ang mixed flora siya. So, when the breastfed infants are switched to a diet of cow's milk or solid food, then Bifidobacteria are progressively joined by Enterics, Bacteroides, Enterococci, Lactobacilli, and Clostridia. So, at birth, the predominant flora and the large intestine, Bacteroides. Okay? Yeah. So, these are the benefits, or yes, the benefits of the flora in the large intestine. Okay, please read on this. So in the urogenital tract, so the anterior urethras of both sexes contain small numbers of the same types of organisms found in the skin. Okay. So these organisms regularly appear in normal voided urine in numbers 10 to the second, 10 to the fourth per milliliter per ml. So in vagina, soon after birth, okay, aerobic lactobacilli appear and persist as long as the pH remains acidic. Okay, this is for several weeks. Okay, so at puberty, neonatal to puberty, okay, aerobic and anaerobic lactobacilli reappear in large numbers, okay, and contribute to the maintenance of an acidic pH. So, this is very important mechanism in preventing the establishment of other mga potential harmful microorganisms in vagina. So, if these lactobacilli are suppressed by example administration of drugs, okay, or yeast, or yeah, administration of drugs, okay? Yeast and other various bacteria can increase in number and cause irritation and inflammation. Okay? So at menopausal stage, yan, so it will return to pre-puberty flora. Let's read on it. Lapit na tayo matapos. So this is just a summary, okay? What are the roles of the normal flora? So they may be a source of opportunistic infection. So yun nga, sabi kanina, it can cause an infection in an immunocompromised host. Okay? So those in patients with impaired defense mechanism. Immunostimulation, so they produce antibodies which may contribute to host defenses, okay? So these or some of these antibodies may cross-react with normal tissue components. They can also protect us, they protect us from external invaders, okay? Ayan. Because of the normal flora occupies body's epithelial surfaces, they are able to prevent other bacteria from establishing themselves. So they block the receptors by competing, okay, by competing with the other bacteria, or they compete for essential nutrients or producing antibacterial substances, so such as fatty acids, peroxides, and bacteriocin. Okay, also they can produce carcinogens. So some normal flora can modify with their enzymes the chemicals in our diet into carcinogens. Okay. Nutrition, some of the normal intestinal flora can produce vitamins. Sabi ko kanina, they can produce vitamins or biotin, diba? Which is available for the use of the host. Then can also stimulate the development of certain tissue, yeah, for cecum and lymphatic tissue in the GI tract, and can influence immunology of gut-associated lymphatics. So what are the overall benefits of the normal flora? Paulit-ulit lang natin sasabihin. So the normal flora can synthesize and excrete vitamins in excess of their own needs, which can be absorbed as nutrients by their host. So for example, in humans, the enteric bacteria can secrete vitamin K and vitamin B12 and lactic acid. And lactic acid bacteria can produce certain B vitamins. Okay? The normal flora also prevent colonization by pathogens by competing for attachment sites or for essential nutrients. Diba sinabi ko na rin kanina yun. So this is thought to be their most important beneficial effect, which has been demonstrated in the oral cavity, intestine, the skin, and the vaginal epithelium. The normal flora also can antagonize other bacteria through the production of substances which inhibit or kill non-indigenous species. Okay? The intestinal bacteria produce a variety of substances ranging from relatively non-specific fatty acids to highly specific bacteria which inhibit or kill other bacteria. Okay. The normal flora also can stimulate the development of certain tissue. Yan. So the cecum and the certain lymphatic tissue in the GI tract. Okay, the normal flora also stimulate the production of natural antibodies. Okay, so since the normal flora behave as antigens, they induce an immunological response, in particular an antibody-mediated response. So low levels of antibodies produced against components of the normal flora are known to cross-react with certain related pathogens and thereby prevent infection or invasion. Okay, so antibodies produced against antigenic components of the normal flora are sometimes referred to as natural antibodies. Okay, and such antibodies, yun na nga, natural antibodies. Okay, what are the harmful effects naman of the normal flora? So, they compete or competition for nutrients or competition with the host for nutrients. So, competition for nutrients in the bacteria in gastrointestinal tract must absorb some of the host nutrients for their own needs. However, in general, they transform them into other metabolizable compounds, but some nutrients are lost to the host. Okay. Okay. They also the normal flora, okay, exhibit bacterial synergism between a member of a normal flora and a potential pathogen. So this means that one organism is helping another organism to grow or survive. There are examples of a member of a normal flora supplying a vitamin or some other growth factors that a pathogen needs in order to grow. So this is called cross-feeding between microbes. Okay, another example of synergism occurs during treatment of staph-protected infection when a penicillin-resistant staph that is a component of a normal flora shares its drug resistance with pathogens that are otherwise susceptible to the drug. Okay? Low-grade toxemia produced in host. So induction of a low-grade toxemia, okay? So minute amounts of bacterial toxin or examples, the endotoxin may be found in the circulation. So of course, if it is this small amounts of bacterial antigen that stimulates the formulation or formation of natural antibodies. Then the normal flora may be agents of the disease. Okay, members of the normal flora may cause endogenous disease if they reach a site or tissue where they are not or they cannot be restricted or tolerated by the host defenses. So many of the normal flora are potential pathogen, and if they gain access to a compromised tissue from which they can invade, a disease may result. Okay, I think this is my last slide. Okay, thank you for listening. Okay. Okay, so wait lang. Okay, so please